Hello and welcome back to Crimson Dread. Before we begin, feel free to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I love reading every single one. If you enjoy drifting into dark, chilling tales drenched in Crimson Dread, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now, get comfortable, dim the lights if you dare, relax your mind, let the outside world fade away. And let's begin. Story 1. I pulled into the lot a few minutes before my shift officially started, the way I always did when I was working nights. The water treatment plant looked the same as it always did after dark, big, quiet, and half lit by yellow security lights that never felt bright enough. In the daytime, it was just concrete, pipes, tanks, and metal railings. At night, it turned into a maze of shadows and empty space, like the place was holding its breath. Night shift wasn't hard work most of the time. It was mostly watching screens, logging numbers, taking rounds and being there in case something went wrong. But the hours were brutal. You were always tired, always a little out of sync with the rest of the world. Even when nothing happened, the building still had that low industrial hum, like a distant engine running. It got inside your head if you let it. I parked, grabbed my bag, and walked toward the employee entrance. The air had that damp, chemical smell that always hung around the plant. Chlorine and wet concrete, and something metallic. My footsteps sounded too loud, echoing off the walls. There were nights where I could go the whole shift only seeing one person, and the rest of the time it felt like I was alone in a giant facility that never slept. When I got inside the control building, I saw Nick already there. He was sitting like he always did, leaning back, slightly in the chair near the desk, looking relaxed. The monitors threw blue and green light across his face. He looked up when I walked in, like he'd been waiting. Day crew didn't have any issues today, Nick said. Should be an easy night. The words came out casual, the same tone he always used when he was trying to boost morale. Like if he said it out loud, the universe might agree and give us a quiet shift. Hell yeah, I said, dropping my bag and stretching my shoulders. I sure hope so. These nights suck. I'm so tired all the time. Nick let out a small laugh. Nothing weird, nothing off. He looked normal. Same work shirt, same posture, same face I'd seen 100 times under fluorescent lights. I headed into our little kitchen area to put my food away. It wasn't much of a kitchen, just a small fridge, a microwave that always smelled like old noodles, a coffee maker no one cleaned properly, and a counter with some paper towels. I opened the fridge, shoved my container on a shelf, and was about to close the door when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out without thinking, expecting some random notification or a message from a friend. It was a text from Nick. For a second, I just stared at the screen, trying to make it make sense. Nick was right there, in the next room. We had just spoken. I almost laughed, because the obvious thought was that he was messing with me already. Nick liked to joke around, and night shift boredom made people do stupid things. Then I actually read the message. Sorry, man. Running late. I'll be there in 5 minutes. My hand tightened around the phone. Cold ran through me, sharp and quick, like I'd stepped into icy water. My brain immediately started searching for a normal answer, because that's what you do when something doesn't fit. You find a reason, any reason, so you can put it back in the box where it belongs. Maybe he sent it earlier and it didn't go through. Bad service. That happens. But no, we weren't in the middle of nowhere with no signal, and even if a message got delayed, why would it show up right now, the exact moment I walked into the kitchen? And why would it say he was running late when I had just talked to him? I closed the fridge slowly and walked back toward the control room, the phone still in my hand. The air felt different, heavier. I stepped through the doorway and looked toward the desk. Nick wasn't there. The chair was empty. For a moment, my stomach dropped, like I'd missed a step going downstairs. I blinked, looked again, and scanned the room. There was nowhere he could have gone without me noticing. The control room wasn't huge. 2 desks, a wall of monitors, A couple of filing cabinets, 2 doors, one leading into the plant itself and one leading out to the parking lot and front area. I stood there with my mouth slightly open, trying to replay the last minute in my head. I had walked in, I had seen him, we talked, he told me day shift had no issues. I replied. That happened. I wasn't dreaming. I wasn't half asleep. Was I? I rubbed my face with one hand, suddenly aware of how tired I really was. Night shift messes you up. Maybe I did imagine it. Maybe I saw someone in the chair and my brain just filled in the details. Maybe it was a trick of the lights, the angle, the shadows. But it didn't feel like that. It felt real. Then a different thought hit me. Did I even see his car out there? I tried to picture the parking lot when I pulled in. I remembered my own car. I remembered the security lights. I remembered the emptiness. But Nick's car, I couldn't confidently say I saw it. My throat felt dry. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to breathe slow. No, this was stupid. I talked to him. It was Nick. He's probably just messing with me. Maybe he hid somewhere. Maybe he stepped into the plant area quietly and I didn't hear him. He could be setting up a prank because he knew I'd be creeped out by a weird text. I turned toward the monitors. One of the screens showed the main gate camera, the view of the entrance where cars came in. Headlights swept across the frame. A car rolled up to the gate, slowed, and turned into the lot. Nick's car. I recognized it immediately. Same shape, same color, same small dent on the bumper that he always complained about. For a second, relief warmed my chest, but it didn't settle things the way it should have. It didn't make it better, it made it worse. Because now I had to explain how Nick could be sitting in the control room and also just now arriving in the parking lot. I watched the screen, almost holding my breath. The car moved out of view as it pulled toward the employee area. Man, I muttered to myself, he's really committed to this. That was the only explanation my brain could stand to use. A prank, a dumb prank, something to make the long shift less boring. Maybe he had arranged something earlier. Maybe, hey. The voice came from behind me, close, like someone speaking right at my shoulder. Jesus Christ, I yelled, jerking so hard my phone almost slipped out of my hand. My heart slammed against my ribs. Every muscle in my body tensed at once. I spun around. Nick was standing there. Not on the monitor, not in the parking lot. In the room just a few feet away, looking at me with a slightly confused expression, like he didn't understand why I was acting like I'd seen a ghost. There was no way he could have gotten here that fast if he was the one in the car on camera. No way. The room felt too small. The air felt thin. I could hear the buzzing of the lights, the hum of equipment, and my own breathing, too loud, too fast. My hands started to shake, and I realized I was gripping my phone like it was the only solid thing in the world. Whatever this was, my body didn't care about logic anymore. Every instinct I had screamed the same message. Danger. I couldn't move. I just stared at him. Sorry, man, he said, lifting his hands a little in a harmless gesture. I didn't mean to scare you. His voice sounded normal. His face looked normal. But the normalness made it worse, like something wearing a perfect mask. He took a step back, relaxed, like he was trying to play it off. Hey, he continued, I'm going to go walk around and check on things. If you need me, give me a call. He said it the way he always did, like it was part of the routine. Like this was just another shift, another night, another set of rounds. Then he turned around and walked toward the door that led deeper into the plant. I watched him go, my eyes locked on his back, waiting for something, anything, to break the illusion. For him to turn and smile too wide, or move wrong, or vanish. But he didn't. He just went through the door and disappeared into the hallway beyond. I stood there still frozen, still trying to understand what had just happened. My mind felt split between panic and disbelief, like I was watching myself from far away. Maybe I was losing it, that was possible. I hadn't slept properly in days. I'd been running on caffeine and habit. Maybe exhaustion was finally catching up with me in a way I couldn't ignore. I was still standing there when the other door opened, the one on the opposite side of the room, the one that led to the parking lot. Nick walked in. The same Nick, same clothes, same face. He came in with the tired, annoyed look of a guy who'd just fought traffic. He didn't look like someone who had already been inside the building for 10 minutes. He looked like someone who had just arrived. My blood turned to ice. I felt my legs go weak, but my body still wouldn't move. I couldn't even speak. It was like fear had shut off the part of me that made words. He didn't notice anything wrong with me. He didn't see the version of himself that had just walked into the plant, because that version was gone from sight. And he didn't know what I had seen. "Hey, man," he said, breathing out like he was letting go of frustration. "Sorry, traffic was terrible today." He dropped his keys on the desk, the sound sharp in the quiet room. That little normal sound hit me hard. Keys, desk, real, ordinary. "I'll go ahead and do the first set of rounds," he added. Then he walked toward the same door the other one had used. He reached for the handle, opened it, and stepped through. And just like that, he was gone too. I stood there alone with the monitors and the humming machines, feeling like the floor might tilt out from under me. My thoughts were a mess. Two Nicks, same face, same voice, same body. One came from inside the plant, one came from outside. Both acted like everything was normal. Both went through the same door. There was no way to process it. Am I actually going crazy? I dug my nails into my palm, hard enough to sting, like pain could anchor me. My heartbeat wouldn't slow down. Every part of me wanted to run out to my car and drive away and never come back, but I couldn't. Not yet. Not without understanding what was happening. Not without knowing if something was still in the building with me. My phone buzzed again. The vibration made me flinch so hard my shoulders jumped. I pulled it out fast, half expecting another text from Nick, half expecting something worse. It was a call. The screen showed my boss's name. That gave me a tiny slice of relief. My boss was real. My boss existed in the normal world. A call from him meant something normal was happening somewhere. I answered immediately. "Hello?" My voice sounded thin. "Hey," my boss said. His tone was careful, the way people sound when they're trying to be professional but they're carrying bad news. "I know you're probably wondering where Nick is. I'm just calling to let you know he was found dead in his apartment today." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The words didn't land right away, like my mind rejected them. Dead. Found dead today. I stared at the blank wall above the monitors, my vision narrowing. I felt lightheaded, like I might pass out. There was a long pause on my end. I couldn't speak. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. If Nick was dead, then who did I just see? And who did I see twice? My stomach rolled. I swallowed hard, fighting nausea. My boss kept talking, not realizing what was happening on my side of the phone. "I know this must be tough. If you need anything or want to talk to someone, let us know, and we can help." I gripped the phone tighter, like it was the only connection to reality I had left. My hand was sweating. "I won't bother you anymore," he said. "Have a great shift." And then the call ended. The dead silence after the call felt wrong, like the room should have reacted, like an alarm should have gone off, like the building should have acknowledged what I'd just heard. But it didn't. It just hummed along. I stood there for what felt like a long time, not moving, barely blinking. My body had gone numb the way it does when your brain can't decide between fight and flight. Nick was dead. Dead people don't come to work. Dead people don't text you that they're running late. Dead people don't walk through doors. My mind started trying to protect me again by offering another idea. Maybe my boss was wrong. Maybe there was some mistake. Maybe it was someone else. Maybe Nick had a twin. But the thought died as soon as it formed. There was no twin. Nick had never mentioned a twin, and my boss didn't sound unsure. He sounded like someone delivering confirmed news. I forced myself to move. The control room chair creaked as I sat down hard. Like my legs had finally given permission, I turned back to the camera feeds, my eyes scanning every screen. The main hallway, the chemical room, the outside gate, the pump stations, the loading area. Nothing. No movement. No sign of anyone walking around. I stared at the screens until my eyes started to hurt. Then I glanced away and looked back again, expecting to catch a flicker of motion that would prove I wasn't alone. Still nothing. A strange hope sparked in me, small and desperate. Maybe it really was in my head. Maybe I'd hallucinated it all. Maybe the stress, the lack of sleep, the weird hours. Maybe that was enough to make me see someone who wasn't there. The thought was terrifying, but it was still less terrifying than the other option. I swiveled toward the security system monitor that tracked badge access. It logged every time a badge was used to open a door, the name, the door location, the timestamp. If no one was here, it would show that. If I was imagining things, it would show that too. My eyes flicked over the list. At first, I felt a small, shaky sense of relief. There was no record of anyone badging in. No Nick, no me, no one. That almost calmed me. It suggested nothing actually happened, that the doors hadn't opened, that my brain was the problem. I leaned back, breathing slowly, trying to get control of myself. Maybe I should call someone. Maybe I should leave. Maybe I should. Then the screen updated. A new entry popped onto the list. Nick. And then, right under it, another entry. Nick. 2 separate door names, both doors that led into the control room. Timestamps identical down to the second. My skin crawled. I leaned forward, staring, hoping I'd misread it. Hoping the system had glitched, doubled an entry, something simple. But it wasn't doubled. It was 2 different doors. Those doors were on opposite sides of the room. Absolute dread poured through me, thick and heavy, wiping out every other thought. The kind of dread that doesn't feel like fear of the dark or fear of being startled. It felt like the fear of being hunted. And then, right on cue, I heard it. A click from the door to the plant side. A click from the door to the parking lot side. At the exact same time, both handles turned. Both doors began to open. And I realized with a sick certainty that whatever had been pretending to be Nick wasn't done with me yet. Story 2. She died last Thursday because I hesitated, because I pulled back for a single beat of my heart when she needed me to hold on. I let her fall into the dark water. She was my wife. She was my love. I understand that now, the way you understand something too late, when the understanding can't fix anything. I teach at a university. I'm 43. I'm supposed to be the kind of man who can explain his actions, who can find the correct words, and arrange them into something that makes sense. But right now, I can barely shut my eyes without seeing her again. I don't even see it like a normal memory. It comes in pieces, like sharp photos someone keeps slamming down in front of me. Her face, the ice, her hands, the black water. I deserve it. I know I do. I can wrap it in guilt and grief and complicated feelings, but under all of it, there's a simpler truth. I was a coward. I had excuses ready for everything, and I used them like shields. I was living between 2 women, and I told myself that made me confused or unlucky or trapped. My wife, Jackie, and Leah. I loved them both. That's the part that keeps crushing me from the inside. If I had only wanted one of them, maybe my mind could make a clean story out of it. But I didn't. I wanted both. I needed both, and needing people like that, like their medicine, doesn't end in anything clean. Jackie and I were married for 11 years. She worked in research at a drug company I won't name. It was outside the city in one of those big gray buildings with glass walls, fences, gates, badges, cameras. The kind of place where people smile politely and never actually tell you what they do. Jackie was senior there. She wasn't just smart in the normal way. She was the kind of smart that made other smart people focus when she spoke, like they didn't want to miss anything. But she wasn't some distant manager who lived on emails and meetings. She still got deep into the work. She cared about the smallest details. She wanted to see everything herself, not through summaries, not through other people's hands. I used to love that about her. I used to love that she didn't pretend. If something mattered to her, you could feel it. It was like being near someone made of wire and electricity. She was beautiful, too, not only to me. Tall and thin, dark hair, pale skin, eyes so dark they looked black unless the light hit them just right. Her gaze stayed on you half a second longer than most people's, and it made you feel seen in a way that was not always comfortable. The kind of face that made strangers look twice without knowing why. Even when she was tired, even when she was angry, she had that beauty that doesn't fade. Living with her, though, felt like living next to a live wire that never powered down. In the beginning, I told myself it was exciting. It felt like being with someone intense. I even thought her attention to detail was flattering. I thought she notices everything because she cares. Over the years, it stopped feeling flattering. She noticed if I came home 3 minutes late. She noticed if I showered before dinner when I usually did it after. She noticed the smell of coffee on my shirt from a place I didn't normally go. She noticed when I paused too long before answering a simple question, when I looked away at the wrong moment, when my laugh sounded forced. She never yelled. Sometimes I wish she had. A loud fight burns out fast. A loud fight gives you something to push against. With Jackie, it was quieter than that, and it was worse. She would look at me for 1 second too long, and I'd feel my stomach tighten like it was trying to climb into my throat. Or she'd ask one small question in a calm voice, like she was just curious, and I'd feel judged even if she didn't say a single cruel word. There were times I snapped and called her names. I hate remembering that, but I can't pretend I didn't. Ice bitch, I said once during a fight, when I wanted to hurt her because I felt trapped, and I wanted her to feel trapped too. The words came out ugly and childish. They didn't even match the kind of man I claimed to be. It didn't make her explode, it made her go still. That's what people don't understand about Jackie. Her anger wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was colder than that. Like something inside her pulled back and shut a door. Her face would stay calm, but her eyes would change. They'd look like the surface of a lake in winter, hard and flat, hiding the depth underneath. Once, during one of our fights, she watched me for a long moment. Then she said quietly, "You're the one with the crack in your heart. Behind it, there's just emptiness. An endless hole no woman is ever going to fill." I remember how it landed. It didn't sound like an insult. It sounded like a diagnosis. After that, we did what we always did. We patched things up. We said just enough to keep moving. We went back to work, back to dinners, back to the routine. We stayed polite. We stayed married. And then the cold distance settled back in like dust. At least we didn't have kids. That sounds terrible to say, but it's true. There was no small person in the middle of it. No child who would grow up thinking, love always feels like walking on thin ice. Jackie told me early in our relationship that her mother killed herself after Jackie's father had an affair. She told me before we got married, like she was putting the truth on the table and watching to see if I would flinch. We were sitting in her car outside my place. The engine was off. The windows were fogged from our breath. The street was empty and quiet, and the car made small ticking sounds as it cooled. She had her hands folded in her lap, looking straight ahead, not at me. She didn't cry. I don't think I ever saw her cry in the way most people do. "Some people don't survive betrayal," she said. Then she turned her head slightly and looked at me, and the way she said the next part made my skin tighten. "And they kill families." I never forgot it, even when I pretended I did. Even when I acted like it was just a sad story from her past, it stayed in me like a warning label you can't peel off. But I loved her. I need that to be in the story, because the ugly parts are true, but this is true too. I loved the smell of her hair when she came to bed late, her skin cool from moving around the house, her hair carrying some faint, clean scent from whatever shampoo she used. I loved the rare way she smiled, like she had to push it out through stone. I loved how, on good mornings, she'd tuck her cold feet under my leg and steal my warmth without asking. I loved the softness of her body under my hands, and the quiet outline of her bones beneath it. The way she felt real and solid and somehow fragile at the same time. I loved her even when I was scared of her, and by the end, I was scared of her more than I ever admitted out loud. It felt like living under a gray sky that never cleared. Something heavy pressed down, day after day. I felt like the air was slowly being pulled out of our home. I didn't know how to talk about it without sounding dramatic or cruel, and I didn't know how to fix it. I started taking longer routes home. I started telling myself I was tired, I was stressed, I was just going through a phase. Then Leah appeared, and the world changed shape around her. Leah was 28. She was a graduate student, working with one of my colleagues. She wasn't in my classes, thank God, but she was close enough to my world that it made everything dangerous. The first time I realized I wanted her, I felt sick with myself. It wasn't that she was a kid. She wasn't. But the difference in our ages, the fact that she was connected to the university, the fact that I had a wife, all of it made the desire feel dirty before anything even happened. And if Jackie ever found out I was sleeping with a graduate student, it wouldn't just wreck my marriage, it could wreck my job. It could wreck my reputation, it could ruin me in a way that lasted longer than any divorce. Leah was nothing like Jackie. Jackie was all sharp edges and stillness. Leah was softer, warmer, like sunlight on skin after you've been cold too long. Honey-colored skin. Thick blonde curls she kept tying up and then letting down again like she couldn't decide how she wanted to be seen. Warm blue eyes, a wide mouth that made her smile look honest, even when she was trying to hide her feelings. Small gold earrings that looked old-fashioned, like something passed down. When Leah laughed, she laughed with her whole face, not just her mouth. When she listened, she leaned in. She got close. Her breath would brush me when she spoke, and there was something in the way she smelled that I can't explain even now. Not perfume, not soap, not anything obvious, just something that pulled me in like I was thirsty and she was water. Jackie made me feel examined. Leah made me feel wanted. I wanted Leah badly. I hate admitting it, but I have to. The first time she touched my wrist in a cafe and asked if I was okay, I felt that touch the rest of the day. It sat on my skin like a brand. It wasn't only about sex, though there was that too. It was the way my body relaxed around her. The way my shoulders dropped without me noticing. With Leah, I could breathe. I could say stupid things. I could be tired. I could sit in silence and not feel like the silence was a test I was failing. That's how it started. A few conversations, a few lingering looks, a moment that felt like it could still be innocent if I chose it to be. Then it became real, a full affair. I always thought I wasn't that man. I always thought I had some kind of moral line inside me, something solid. Turns out, I didn't. 3 months. 3 months of deleting messages in parking lots. 3 months of checking my collar and mirrors before I went home. 3 months of erasing songs from my playlists because they reminded me of her. Kate Bush, The Weeknd, little things that felt like evidence. 3 months of walking back into my own house with my heart hammering. Wondering if tonight was the night Jackie would look at me and simply know. She almost caught me more than once. A blonde hair on my coat would have been too easy. Jackie's hair was dark, like spilled ink. I got careful. I checked myself before I walked through the front door. I brushed off my clothes. I watched what I wore. I watched what I said. I watched my tone. But it wasn't hair that almost gave me away. It was smaller things. Orange-scented hand cream on my skin that wasn't ours. A motel receipt I forgot in the inside pocket of my coat. One night, my phone lit up on the table and Jackie glanced down before I could flip it over. She didn't react right away. She didn't ask a question fast. Like someone shocked. She let a full minute pass in silence. Then she said, "Do your students usually text you after midnight?" My mouth went dry. I could have said anything. I could have told the truth. I could have at least told a better lie. Instead, I said, "Leah isn't my student." I don't know why I said her name out loud. Maybe because some part of me wanted to be caught. Maybe because I was tired of juggling lies. Maybe because I wanted to watch Jackie's face and see if she already knew. Jackie looked at me. "That wasn't my question," she said. And I did what I always did. I dodged. I smiled like it was nothing. I pretended to be offended as if she was being unreasonable for asking. I told myself it was self-preservation. It was cowardice. The worst part is, I wasn't only a bad husband because I lied. I was a bad husband because I stopped paying attention to what mattered. Or maybe I did pay attention, and I chose not to act because acting would have demanded something from me. A little before I met Leah, Jackie had started looking unwell. Not sick in an obvious way, just off, paler, thinner, tired in her bones. There were mornings she moved like gravity had doubled overnight. I asked once if she was okay. Then again, later. She brushed it off. She said they had doctors at her facility, that she'd get checked. She said it was just long hours, pressure, everyone running on fumes. She mentioned a new drug project, experimental work, high stakes. And I took that as permission to look away. I stayed out later. I started spending more nights with Leah. Even then, even with Leah, seeing Jackie like that bothered me. That's the part that doesn't fit the simple story people want, where I didn't care and I ran toward the younger woman without looking back. I did care. I still wanted Jackie in a way I couldn't untangle. Not the same way I wanted Leah, not like fire. But I'd look at my wife and still see the woman I had once wanted so badly it hurt. And it made me feel confused and guilty and angry, because none of those feelings fixed anything. Leah finally tried to force a choice. We were in the room she rented outside town, a plain place with cheap furniture and curtains that didn't block the light. She'd told people she had a workshop to attend, some excuse that sounded normal. She was sitting on the bed with takeout cartons between us. She looked worn down, not in a dramatic way, but like someone who had been waiting too long for a man who kept going home to someone else. "I can't keep being the place you hide," she said. Her voice wasn't cruel. That almost made it worse. She sounded like she was trying to protect what was left of her own heart. I looked at her bare feet tucked under her, at my sweatshirt hanging off one shoulder, at the open look on her face. She looked hurt, but she still looked gentle. I wanted to bury my face in her hair and disappear. "So?" I asked, like a coward, forcing her to say it fully. "So either you leave," she said, "or you stop coming." Something tightened in my chest. I swallowed and heard myself say, "I don't know how to do either." It looked like she wanted to say something sharp, something final. Instead, she leaned in, uncertain, and kissed me softly. Her hand rested on my arm, as if she wasn't sure I would still be there when she opened her eyes. That same night, Jackie asked me if I would go with her to a cabin near a lake in the north. 2 nights. No work. No distractions. Just us. It caught me off guard. It shouldn't have. Looking back, it feels obvious that she knew more than she ever said. Jackie didn't guess. Jackie noticed. But at the time, I told myself it was a good sign. I told myself it meant she wanted to reconnect. I told myself it was a chance to fix something. I didn't understand that some people don't plan a weekend getaway to save a marriage. Sometimes they plan it to end something. The cabin was simple and quiet, tucked near the water with trees all around, the kind of place people go to pretend the world doesn't exist. The owner was an older man with a face like leather. He gave us the keys and pointed at the lake like it was a thing that needed respect. "Don't go too far out on the ice," he said. "Look solid till it doesn't." I remember thinking her smile looked strange, like it wasn't reaching her eyes. I remember thinking she looked too thin in her coat. That night, we ate in silence more than we talked. She watched me the way she used to, like she was reading a book written in a language only she understood. I drank too much. I slept badly. Every time I woke up in the dark, I could hear her breathing beside me, steady and quiet. In the morning, while Jackie was in the bathroom, my phone buzzed. A text from Leah. "If you mean it, I'll wait tonight." My stomach dropped, not because Leah had texted, but because it reminded me that my life was split down the middle, and I was the one holding the knife. Jackie came out of the bathroom and saw my face. She didn't ask to see the phone. She didn't need to. She walked closer, and her eyes moved over me, like she was counting every lie I had ever told. "Who is she?" she asked. The cabin felt suddenly too small, like the walls had leaned in. I could hear the quiet hum of the heater. I could hear my own breathing. I lied. And it was a bad lie, the kind that doesn't even try to be believable. Jackie stared at me for a long moment. Then she said, very quietly, "Don't do this to me." She put on her coat with careful movements, like she was dressing for a ritual. Then she walked out of the cabin and headed toward the lake. I followed her. The air outside burned my throat. The snow squeaked under my boots. Jackie's coat was dark against the bright white, and she looked so thin it scared me. Beautiful, yes. Breakable, too, in a way I hadn't wanted to see. She stopped near the shore and turned around. "Who is she?" she asked again. I opened my mouth and nothing came out. I couldn't pick a truth that wouldn't destroy something. I couldn't pick a lie that would hold. My silence was an answer. Jackie nodded once, like she'd reached the end of a calculation. Then she turned away and walked onto the ice. Not slowly, not carefully. Quickly, like she was trying to get somewhere before she changed her mind. I saw a darker patch ahead, a place where the ice didn't look right. I knew what it meant. That's the part that makes my guilt feel like it has teeth. I knew. I understood in that instant that this was dangerous, that she could go in. "Jackie," I called. "Come back." I don't know if she heard me. She kept walking. I pressed my lips together so hard they hurt. I took a step, then another, my boots crunching snow on top of ice. Then the crack came. It was a sharp, wrong sound, like a gunshot under the world. For a half second, nothing happened. Then Jackie dropped hard. One leg went through, then the other, and suddenly she was in black water up to her chest, gasping, fighting, her hands clawing at the edge of the ice. She looked back at me. I can't describe her face in a way that makes it smaller. I dream it every night. It is my punishment. It was terror, betrayal, and something else too. Something like a final understanding. Like she was seeing exactly who I was, down to the bone. I ran, I did, but not right away. There was 1 second, maybe less. One filthy, shameful second where a thought slid through my mind as clean and simple as a blade. If she dies, I won't have to choose. That thought didn't feel like something I decided. It felt like something that was already inside me, waiting. And then it was there in the open, and I saw it, and I hated myself even as it happened. Then I moved. I dropped down on my stomach to spread my weight. I crawled toward her. I reached out, and the ice under me groaned, and then it cracked too, and cold water hit my hands like knives. Jackie grabbed my wrist. For an instant, I had her. I felt her grip. I felt her nails bite into my skin. And I pulled back, not because I didn't want her, not because I wanted her to die, because I was terrified of going in myself, because my body reacted before my mind caught up, because fear is fast and selfish. That tiny backward movement was enough. Her hand slipped. Her eyes widened. She tried to grab again, but the edge broke away under her fingers. The water took her like it had been waiting. By the time I lunged forward again, she was gone. The hole in the ice looked too small for a person. Too neat, like a mouth closing. The surface around it shuddered, and then the water calmed, black and flat. It didn't look real. It looked like a trick. I yelled her name, I don't know how many times. My voice sounded strange in the open air, thin and useless. I crawled back, shaking, soaked up to my forearms. My hands burned like they were being cut. After that, it becomes pieces. Sirens, people running, someone putting a blanket around my shoulders. The smell of wet wool, a voice asking me questions I couldn't answer. Someone saying Jackie's name like saying it could pull her back. Someone said my name too, but it didn't feel like it belonged to me anymore. I don't remember calling the police, but I must have. I don't remember the drive back, but I know I drove. I remember gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles hurt. I remember my breath coming too fast, as if I'd been running for miles. And then I did the ugliest thing I have ever done. I drove straight to Leah. My wife had just died, and I still went to the woman I'd been cheating with. Not to confess, not to end it, not to do anything honest. I went because I needed her. That's the truth that makes me feel sick. That's the truth that doesn't let me sleep. I went because I was empty and panicking, and I wanted warmth. And Leah had always felt like warmth. Even after the lake, I still reached for comfort like a child reaching for a blanket. Leah's door was unlocked. That felt wrong immediately. Leah was careful. Leah always locked up. But I was not thinking straight. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room looked too bare. No clothes thrown over a chair. No bag on the floor. No books. No cup on the nightstand. Not messy like someone lived there. Emptied. My mouth went dry. I walked further in, my shoes quiet on the cheap carpet, and then I saw the sink and what was sitting beside it. A badge. For a second, my mind didn't understand what my eyes were seeing. It was just a familiar shape. Plastic. Clip. Printed name. The kind of thing you wear at a place with gates and security. My brain recognized it before I did, the way you recognize a voice in a crowd before you know who it is. Jackie's name was on it. My knees felt weak. I stared at the badge as if it might change into something else if I stared long enough. Next to it was a small case. Inside were 3 small glass vials, clean, clear, clinical, like something from a lab. And beside that was a sheet of paper. It wasn't addressed to anyone. It didn't have a deer at the top. But I knew who it was meant for as soon as I saw her handwriting. Jackie's handwriting was neat and controlled, like she could discipline ink. I don't remember every word. My mind started blurring, like it was trying to protect itself. I remember the sense of it, the message underneath the sentences. Jackie had used an experimental drug to change herself, to make herself softer, warmer, easier to love. She had made herself into the version of a woman she thought I wanted. Leah wasn't a separate person. Leah was Jackie, and Jackie was Leah. I read it again and again like the meaning would settle if I forced it. But my mind wouldn't let the 2 images connect. Jackie's dark eyes, Jackie's cold stillness, Jackie's sharp attention to every detail. Leah's warm laugh, Leah's honey skin, Leah's sunlight softness. My brain kept sliding away from the idea that they were one person, like it was trying to escape a truth too large. I gripped the edge of the sink until my hands hurt. The room felt far away, as if I were looking at it through glass. My ears rang. My breathing sounded loud and wrong. The note said she had seen it clearly in the end, that I didn't love her. Not her. I loved the drug and what it turned her into. I loved the version of her that asked less from me, the version that didn't look at me like she could see every lie. Knowing that broke her, the note said. But she couldn't stop. She was addicted to being the only version of herself I ever chose. I stood there in that empty room, staring at the badge and the vials and her handwriting, and a sick clarity settled over me. The lake. The hesitation. The way my body pulled back. It wasn't only fear of the water. It wasn't only panic. It was the same hollow thing inside me, the thing Jackie had named in that fight. The endless hole. The part of me that wants comfort more than truth. Escape more than responsibility. The part of me that could love someone and still let them go if letting them go made my life easier. She had tried to become someone else for me. She had split herself into pieces and offered me the warm piece, the easy piece, the piece that didn't scare me. And when she asked me to choose, when the choice finally arrived in the open, I hesitated, and she died. I see it now. Not just what she did, but why she did it. Not just what I did, but what I am. There's a hollow in me that even real love can't survive. And now, it's all I have left. Story 3. Aletto was the kind of person who could walk into a room and make it his without even trying. He talked to everyone. He laughed easily. He always looked like he had somewhere better to be, but he still chose to stay. He had the confidence of someone who'd never been told no in his life, and the face of someone who didn't have to ask for anything twice. I was the opposite. I didn't float through crowds. I dug under them. I was a quiet freshman at a university in New York, the guy who kept his head down and prayed nobody noticed he existed. I went to class, went to the library, went back to my dorm. If you asked me back then what my biggest goal was, it wouldn't have been success, or love, or even happiness. It would have been invisibility. I didn't get it. Not even close. I don't know how he noticed me in the first place. I don't know why he bothered. I don't know why, out of all the people who stared at him like he was a celebrity, he decided to walk toward the one person who wanted to disappear. But he did. It happened in the library in the coldest part of it during winter, where the windows looked like they were trying to freeze from the edges inward. I remember staring at the frost patterns on the glass, watching them creep and spread like tiny rivers made of ice. I was supposed to be studying, but my head was full of numbers and noise and anxiety, and the frost felt easier to focus on. Then I heard a voice behind me. "You there." I turned, already expecting to apologize for something I hadn't even done. That was my default setting around confident people. He was leaning against the wall like he belonged there. Even for winter, he was overdressed, layered up in bright coats and scarves and gloves, like he'd dressed for some dramatic photo shoot instead of a campus library. His height didn't help either. He was so tall that it made me feel smaller just standing near him. "I don't think I've ever seen you around before," he said slowly, like he was stretching the words on purpose. His accent made every sentence sound expensive. "What's your name?" My first thought was that he had the wrong person. My second thought was that if he didn't, then something bad was about to happen. Guys like that didn't approach guys like me unless they wanted something. "What do you want?" I asked. I wasn't trying to be rude. I was trying to be careful. He grinned like that was the funniest answer he could have received. His eyes were the strangest thing about him. They didn't have a single steady color. They shifted, pinks and reds and golds and warm oranges, like a moving sunset. If you stared too long, you started to wonder if you were imagining it. He held out a pale hand, calm and sure, and said, "You'll do." I laughed a little, because I didn't know what else to do. "What does that mean?" I asked. He didn't answer. He just watched me like he'd already made a decision and was waiting for me to catch up. I never found out what he meant in that moment. Sometimes I wish I never had. Sometimes I'm not sure I mean it. We started dating fast, in a way that didn't make sense with my personality. I'd spent my whole life assuming love was something that happened to other people. Aletto treated it like it was a natural thing, like he'd simply decided I was his and that was that. He was older than me, an upperclassman with a reputation so big it felt like it had its own gravity. He went to frat parties, charity events, galas, anywhere that required money, charm, and a face people wanted to look at. Everyone wanted him. Everyone wanted to be him. And somehow he wanted me. I kept expecting it to be a joke that would reveal itself. Like eventually he'd laugh and tell me I'd fallen for it. Or he'd get bored and move on the way people like him always did. But he didn't. He was kind. Not performative kind. Not the type of kind that was meant to be posted online. He was warm in private, attentive in small ways, the type of person who remembered things you said casually and brought them up later like they mattered. That was the worst part, honestly. If he'd been cruel, leaving him would have been simple. If he'd been shallow, I could have told myself it wasn't real. But it felt real. That's how I let my guard down. The first time I noticed something was off was on a cold, sunny day, March 13th, about a week before spring. The sky looked soft and harmless. There were clouds, but thin ones. and the sunlight came through like it was filtered through gold. Aletto was in a good mood, almost bouncing on his feet. He took my hand like he always did, like he was proud to be seen with me. "I wish to introduce you to my flock," he said. I froze mid-note, my pen hovering over my notebook like I'd forgotten how to write. Your what?" I asked, and my voice cracked so hard it made people nearby turn their heads. He blinked at me, confused for a second, then brightened like he'd figured it out. "Oh, yes, family. That's what I meant." He repeated the word to himself quietly like he was testing it. Family. Family. That has 2, no 3 syllables. I should have asked more questions right then. I should have pushed harder. But I was too caught up in the fact that this man who seemed perfect was standing here, holding my hand, acting like my boyfriend. I didn't want to ruin it with suspicion. "How do you not know what a family is?" I asked anyway, trying to laugh like it was nothing. He waved a hand. English still escapes me sometimes. It's a French thing. It didn't make sense. The French word for family is basically the same. And it wasn't just that moment. There were other little things. He'd used the wrong word in a way that didn't feel like a normal translation mistake. Sometimes he'd pause too long before answering simple questions. I'd asked him once where in France he was from, and he'd smiled and kissed my forehead and changed the subject like it was adorable that I'd asked. I told myself it was romantic mystery. I told myself he was private. I told myself it wasn't my place to demand details. I told myself a lot of things back then. When he said he wanted me to meet his family, my stomach dropped. "You do realize I'm going to stick out, right?" I said. "Like, really stick out." "What makes you say that?" he asked, genuinely puzzled, like the idea hadn't even occurred to him. "Old money families have rules," I said. "They have expectations. I don't know any of that. What if I embarrass you?" He looked at me like I'd hurt him. "You could never embarrass me. Don't be ridiculous, mon coeur." Then he wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin near my shoulder. He always did that. He said holding someone from behind was intimate because it required trust. You couldn't see their face, you couldn't watch their hands, you had to believe they wouldn't hurt you. "It will be okay," he whispered, his breath warm against my neck. He smelled like vanilla and brownies, like a bakery. The smell was so comforting it made my chest loosen. Then he said something that made me go cold. "Besides, I don't even know who my parents are," he added lightly, like it was a fun fact. "If anyone lacks protocol, it's me." I turned so fast I almost hit him. "What do you mean you don't know who your parents are?" He smiled like it was nothing. I stared at him like it was everything. I should have walked away then. But he looked so excited about introducing me to his family that doubting him felt like crushing a kid's happiness. And I didn't have enough spine back then to do it. So I stayed quiet. When he said we'd be gone for over a week, I stayed quiet. When he said we'd be flying to Geneva, I stayed quiet. When he said we'd drive 5 hours through the French Alps, I swallowed my fear and agreed, because he looked so happy. I didn't stay quiet when we arrived. We pulled up to what he called his family estate, and my brain just stopped working. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't even one of those ridiculous rich people compounds you see online. It was a castle built into the mountain itself, like the stone had been carved out and shaped into walls and towers and terraces. It looked like marble dusted with snow, impossibly clean against the mountainside. Then there were the gardens. They were everywhere. Vines twisted around arches, thick and dramatic, like they'd been trained to frame the building on purpose. Flowers exploded across every surface in colors so bright they didn't look real. Roses in shades that reminded me of the sky. Sunflowers, orchids, wild flowers in reds and pinks and oranges. It looked like nature had thrown itself at the castle and decided to win. I couldn't breathe for a second. "This is where we're staying?" I asked, my voice coming out higher than I meant. "It is beautiful, yes," Aletto said, smiling proudly. "And that is only the outside. Our spring estate, every equinox we gather here. This is a vacation home? He shrugged like it wasn't insane. I suppose. He answered in a way that sounded poetic and useless at the same time, like he was repeating something he'd been told. My family has many tongues and many flowers, he said. Then, more practically, also, the French government pays us well to keep to ourselves and maintain our holdings. Historical property. Nothing about that made me feel better, but I nodded anyway because I didn't know what else to do. The path to the entrance was grass, soft and wet and green like it was already spring, even though winter still clung to the mountains. Hedges lined the walkway, tall enough to make it feel like we were being funneled into the building. There were pine trees covered in roses, and apples so big they looked fake, like props from a weird fairy tale. I stared too long, and Aledo smiled at me like he knew something I didn't. At the entrance, a woman stopped us. She was older, with silver hair styled perfectly, and a white gown that made her look like she'd been carved from snow. Her face had wrinkles, but she was still striking, like age had sharpened her features instead of softening them. Her eyes were so dark blue they were almost black. She looked at Aledo the way a person looks at a package they're deciding whether to accept. "Which one are you?" she asked. I didn't understand the question. Aledo did. "I was born on the eve of April 5th, he answered. The woman squinted like she was thinking, then reached into her sleeve and pulled out an empty syringe. My whole body tensed. Aledo held out his hand without hesitation. She pricked him, filled the syringe, and then, before my brain could fully accept what I was seeing, she tipped the blood into her mouth. She drank it, like it was wine. She swallowed, smacked her lips once, and then licked the last red stain from the corner of her mouth like it was normal. I stood there in frozen shock, my mind screaming at my feet to move, to run, to do anything except stand politely in front of a woman who had just tasted my boyfriend's blood like it was a family recipe. "You're one of mine," she said. "Get inside, you're late." "What about you?" My stomach dropped so hard it felt like it took my spine with it. Before I could answer, Aledo reached for her hand and gave a small shake of his head, subtle but firm. "He's my guest," he said. "The dance is for him, remember?" The woman made a sound like she was humoring him. "Fine, you've picked well." Then she smiled at me, and it was the first time she looked anything like a welcoming host. "We've sent clothes up for both of you. Prepare. Oh, how lovely it is to have a new member of the family." New member? I wasn't sure if she meant it as a metaphor or a threat. We weren't alone the rest of the way to our room. Men in pale clothing moved around us like silent chaperones. They didn't speak. They just guided us, watched us, made sure we kept moving. The whole time I felt like a dog being escorted to a vet exam room. The moment the bedroom door shut, I finally exploded. "What was that?" I hissed. "They took your blood and drank it. That's not normal." Aledo was looking through the clothes laid out for us like it was Christmas morning. There were coats and masks and embroidered fabric that probably cost more than my entire childhood. He looked up. "What do you mean?" "This." I flung my hands around the room, like the walls themselves were guilty. "All of it. Your mother just drank your blood. It's family protocol," he said calmly. "That way we know who is who, like biometric scans. You have fingerprints. We have blood." That's the most insane thing I've ever heard. He didn't seem insulted. If anything, he looked amused, like I was struggling to understand something simple. Then he said something in French, slow and reverent, like he was quoting scripture. "For behold," he translated, "truth is sealed in the blood of all flesh." I sat down hard on the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted. "What have I gotten myself into?" I whispered. I tried to convince myself it was just some twisted tradition, some old-world rich family ritual. People did weird things. Money warped people. Maybe this was their version of a trust exercise. Maybe they were just theatrical. But when I stood up to grab my luggage and told him quietly, I think I should leave, he looked genuinely panicked. "What? Why?" he said, reaching for my hand. Kane, I planned this whole thing for you. He didn't get to finish. There was a sharp knock at the door. Aletto, Angela. She must have concerns with the costumes. My stomach tightened. Angela was his ex. Not just an ex. One of those girls on campus who acted like she owned every hallway she walked through. She was loud, mean, and the type of person who treated other people's feelings like entertainment. "How is she here?" I demanded. "Why would you invite her?" Aletto didn't answer. He opened the door. Angela practically threw herself at him. "Aletto," she squealed, hugging him like she was trying to prove something. He laughed softly, warm and polite, like he didn't feel the tension filling the room like smoke. "This castle is insane," she gushed. "There's so much to do. Me and the other girls are doing a little hot tub thing. You should come." She leaned into him, smiling up at him like I wasn't there. Her top looked like it was fighting for its life. I didn't even know what to say because I wasn't sure if I was more angry or more humiliated. Then she hit me with it. "I'm so glad you invited us all." "All?" I repeated as calmly as I could. Angela's smile sharpened. "Oh, didn't you know? Aletto invited everyone on campus. Well, all the important ones. Alicia, Daisy, Madison." My eyes slid to Aletto. "So you invited every girl you've ever dated." Aletto smiled like he didn't understand why that was bad. "Yes. I thought it would be fun. It took a lot of work to get everyone to come. But the castle helped." Angela smirked like she'd won. I cleared my throat, then decided subtlety was useless. "Angela," I said, "leave us for a moment." She didn't even look at me. No. Aletto's expression shifted, the warmth draining out of it like someone had flipped a switch. "Angela," he said, sharper now, "Kane asked you to leave. Please go." She pouted. "But we'll talk during the dance," he cut in. "And why isn't your hair and makeup done?" Angela rolled her eyes. "Because it's stupid. Green clashes with my skin, and Madison's annoyed she has to dye her hair purple." Aletto's jaw tightened. His hand closed around Angela's shoulder, hard enough that she gasped. "If you want to be invited to anything of mine again," he said quietly, dangerously, "you will wear what you agreed to wear. Madison will dye her hair. And if I hear one more complaint, I will make sure you don't get into a single social club for the rest of your life. Do you understand?" Angela's face went pale. "I'm sorry," she blurted. "Go," Aletto snapped. She left fast, like she was afraid the air itself might punish her if she stayed. I stared at him, stunned. I'd never heard him speak like that. Never seen that kind of cold control on him. Then he turned back to me and smiled again like nothing happened. "Forgive me, love," he said. "You were saying?" I should have gone back to the leaving conversation. I should have demanded answers, but some ugly, possessive part of me was satisfied that he'd put her in her place. I hated that I felt it. I also couldn't stop myself. So instead, I stepped closer, adjusted his collar, and breathed him in. He smelled different now, like smoke and sweet resin, like something burned and cleaned at the same time. "Aletto," I said softly. "Yes?" I leaned in like I was about to whisper something serious, then said, "Get on the bed. We're not leaving. I want to see what you planned." And for a few hours, the world became just us again. Like the castle and the blood and Angela were all part of some distant nightmare that couldn't get through the door. We got ready late. Too late. We were pulling on clothes with frantic hands when someone knocked again to tell us the dance was starting soon. My outfit was ridiculous in a way I couldn't even argue with. A deep ocean blue silk jacket with gold embroidery, purple buttons, and a sea green mask edged in silver with small crystals around the eyes. Lavender pants with green stitching at the hems, like vines creeping upward. I looked like a fancy painting of a person, not a real human being. Aletto spun me around and told me I looked beautiful. He said it with such certainty it almost made me believe him. His own outfit was simple. Black suit, black pants, no mask. When I asked why, he just smiled. Wait for the surprise. The ballroom was enormous, repurposed like a stage. The dance floor was a mosaic of butterflies and flowers. Vines and wreaths draped the walls, the ceiling, even the chandeliers. Apples hung above us in thorny-looking circles like decorations from a dream that had gone wrong. Aleto's mother met us there, and the first thing she did was smack the back of his head with something that looked like a fan. "Look at the state of your hair," she snapped. He yelped, rubbing his head, whining like a scolded kid. Then she handed me a necklace, a simple silver chain with a piece of jade hanging from it, roughly carved with a dark spot on one side. It didn't look expensive compared to everything else here, and that made me uneasy. "It's beautiful," I said, lying automatically. She winked. "It looks dull now. It will look far more stunning once the dance is complete." I didn't like the way she said that. A crowd gathered round the dance floor. Masked men and women in white moved in quiet circles, holding glasses of golden, bubbly liquid. In the sea of white, I spotted the girls from campus in green dresses and dyed hair, purple, pink, orange, yellow. Angela leaned against a wall, glaring at me. None of the girls wore masks. I turned back to Aleto's mother, trying to focus on anything else. She took my hands. Her skin was smooth, almost strangely so. "The music will begin in a few minutes," she said brightly. My throat went dry. "I have to tell you something," I said, and my voice shook. "I don't know how to dance." She laughed like that was adorable. "Don't be silly. The choreography is simple. And besides, you are not the one being judged tonight." She turned and stared at Aleto like he was a disappointing pet. That would be the little larva. Aleto groaned. "I practiced." "You better have," she said, then looked at me with a smile that felt too knowing. "This one is a darling. I won't have you losing him for some unworthy soul." I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. The room shifted. The chatter stopped as if someone had cut a string. The masked crowd moved in coordinated paths, making a perfect circle around us, opening the center like we were on display. The lights dimmed to a cold, bluish tone. Aleto's mother stepped forward, lifted her hands, and screamed, loud enough that my bones seemed to vibrate. "Let the music begin." The music started immediately. Organ, cello, piano, layered, dramatic, too intense for a party. It sounded like a ceremony. It sounded like something that had happened here 1,000 times. Then the crowd began to hum. Not casually, not softly. It was a single shared hum that made the air feel thick, like the room itself was alive and buzzing. Aleto raised his arm and held his hand out toward mine without touching. "Like this," he said gently. "We must not touch. Mirror me." I lifted my hand. Our palms hovered an inch apart. We stepped 3 counts to the side, switched hands, stepped again. It was simple, almost calming. Then Aleto began to sing. "Layers and layers of masks upon masks," he sang, his voice echoing across the hall. The crowd joined in. "Sealing yourself till the porcelain cracks." My skin prickled. I didn't know why, but it felt like the song was aimed at something inside me, like it was calling me out for every way I'd tried to hide in my life. We turned and circled, not touching, close enough that I could feel his warmth. The humming wrapped around us like a net. "Patch it with plaster and what's left of you," they sang. "Will be something completely, entirely new." Hands grabbed me, gentle but firm, and suddenly I wasn't with Aleto anymore. A white-masked woman spun me away, her skirt flaring. She sang right into my face, smiling like this was the happiest moment of her life. Each time one shatters, there's one more below. A man with gray hair took my hand, stiff as a statue, and pulled me through the steps like I'd become part of a machine. I tried to speak, tried to ask where Aleto was, but the music swallowed every sound. "You're dancing with someone that you don't know," the crowd sang. Illusion obscured in the spotlight glow. I twisted, desperate, searching the circle for black fabric in the ocean of white. Then I saw him. Aleto was dancing with Angela, My blood flashed hot with anger, so sharp it made my vision blur. Of course he was. Of course this whole thing was just some elaborate humiliation. Invite me, bring me across the world, dress me like an ornament, then let his ex grind against him in the center of a room full of rich lunatics. But something was wrong. He wasn't smiling. He was moving like he was following something older than music, like he wasn't choosing it. And then he leaned in and kissed Angela's neck. For a split second, I thought it was just inappropriate. Then I saw the spray of red. Angela's eyes went wide. Her hands flew up to her throat. Blood poured between her fingers. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't blink. Aletto moved to the next girl like he was being pulled. He kissed her throat, too. Blood, screams, but the music didn't stop. The crowd kept singing. Craft a new image to fit yourself in. Craft it with plastic or craft it with skin. Angela stumbled backward, collapsing. Another girl fell, then another. Their bodies hit the floor and didn't get back up. People in white stepped around them like the bodies were part of the choreography. I tried to scream. Nothing came out. Aletto kept moving, mouth at throats, leaving ruin behind him. The girls convulsed and collapsed, their green dresses turning dark with blood, and something else. Something golden and thick that dripped with a slow, heavy rhythm onto the mosaic. Drip, drip, drip. The apples hanging from the ceiling looked wet now, like they were sweating. The floor stained. The song kept going. Covers on covers creating disguise. All to make someone you won't recognize. I couldn't find Aletto anymore. The white crowd shifted, dancing, blocking my view, like waves closing over someone drowning. Then Aletto's mother grabbed my hands and spun me hard and fast, her voice loud with joy. "The stage is around you," she sang, "and you are our centerpiece. Keep smiling." She let go, and she disappeared into the white mass like a ghost vanishing into fog. The crowd parted. In the center was something like a fleshy cocoon, upright like a coffin made of wet muscle and skin. It moved. It twitched. I could see the shape of someone inside, pushing against it. 12 bodies lay around it. 12 girls from campus, necks bent wrong, eyes open, green dresses ruined. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might split my ribs. The thing in the cocoon tore. Clawed hands ripped through the surface. The sound was sickening, like tearing raw meat. A shape dragged itself out, writhing, half stuck, struggling to be born. Then a face turned toward me. It looked like Aletto, but not enough to feel safe. His eyes were black now, not shifting colors, not warm, not human. His mouth opened too wide. His teeth were sharp like blades. His skin wasn't skin anymore in places. It shimmered with scales, iridescent and strange. There were lavender markings on his cheekbones, like paint or bruises. And from his back, 2 huge butterfly wings unfolded. Ocean blue, enormous, wet at the edges like they'd just been pulled out of a wound. My brain refused to accept it. My body accepted it immediately. This is what he is. This is what I came here for. Not to meet his family, to be part of whatever this was. "Cain," he growled, and his voice was lower, rougher, like something had crawled inside his throat. I stepped back until my shoulders hit the wall. The air smelled like copper and blood, but under it was something sweet, strawberries mixed with alcohol, like fruit soaked in wine. "Cain," he said again, his clawed hand reaching, still stuck halfway in the cocoon. It made a wet squelch as he moved. "Come here." I couldn't move forward. I couldn't even stand straight. My legs shook like they belonged to someone else. Then his tone snapped. I said, "Come here." He lunged, but the cocoon held him back. He roared, furious, thrashing so hard the thing nearly toppled. His claws scraped the marble floor, and the sound went straight through my skull, like a drill. I turned and ran. I don't remember deciding. I just did it. I shoved the doors open and stumbled into the hallway, my breath tearing out of my throat in sharp, panicked gasps. Behind me, he screamed my name. Cain. The marble cracked under the force of something hitting it, and the cracks raced like lightning across the floor behind me. I heard claws scraping, heard the horrible sound of him trying to pull himself free, heard voices, his family's voices, shouting or singing or laughing. I couldn't tell. I ran until my lungs burned. Outside it was night, but it didn't feel like a normal night. The sky was black and empty. No stars, like someone had erased them. The estate lights were off, and the only glow was that same bluish tint from inside, leaking out in patches like cold fire. I ran through the gardens that had looked beautiful earlier, but at night they looked wrong. The vines seemed thicker. The flowers seemed too dark. The hedges felt like walls. I got lucky. A car was leaving the grounds, someone driving away from the estate. I ran into the road and waved my arms like a maniac. The driver saw my face and didn't ask questions. He just let me in. He drove me to the nearest hotel. From there, I booked a cab and got to the airport as fast as I could. I used Aletto's credit card because my hands wouldn't stop shaking long enough to think clearly. I half expected someone to stop me at the gate, to tell me I wasn't allowed to leave. No one did. I'm back in my dorm room now. I think he knows where I am. I know he knows I used his card. I know he can track me if he wants to. And the worst part is, some part of me still doesn't understand how the person who held me so gently in the library could also be the thing I saw in that ballroom. There's a swarm of butterflies outside my window. Not normal ones. Too many. Their wings are blue and purple and colors that look like oil in sunlight. Some are pure white. Some almost black. Some look like they have no color at all, like they're cut out of shadow. They keep hitting the glass softly, again and again, like they're trying to get in. And I can hear him. Not outside exactly. Not inside either. It's like his voice is threading through the air vents, through the walls, through the tiny gaps in the building. Cain, I'm sorry. Cain, this was for you. Can we just talk, please? It sounds thin and wrong, like insects crawling over each other. I don't know what to do, because I don't know what any of this means. I don't know why he did it. I don't know why his family watched it like it was art. I don't know what the dance is for you was supposed to mean, and I'm terrified that I'm going to find out. When I finally got back to my dorm, there was a package outside my door, a plain cardboard box, Amazon style. But there was no seller name, no return address, nothing that would tell me where it came from. I stared at it for a long time. I told myself not to touch it. I told myself it could be anything, something dangerous, something poisonous, something alive. But my fear didn't stop me. It never has. Fear just makes me choose the wrong thing faster. I brought it inside and opened it with shaking hands. Inside was something wrapped carefully, almost lovingly, and a fork and a spoon placed beside it like this was meant to be a meal. I think it's his heart. Story 4. Jane's ability to guide the souls of the newly dead to where they were meant to go began when she hit puberty. Maybe that timing was a coincidence. Maybe it wasn't. Either way, it started around the same time her father died. And in Jane's mind, the two things were tied together so tightly that she could never fully separate them. She was with him when it happened. One minute her dad was pulling into a parking space like he always did, careful and slow, one hand on the wheel, the other reaching over to squeeze her knee the way he did when he was in a good mood. They had just come from soccer. Jane still remembered the sharp bite of cold air on her legs, the way the wind slipped under her shorts and made her skin go tight and goosebumped. She had been thinking about snacks, about homework, about nothing important. Normal thoughts. Safe thoughts. Then her dad's face changed. Not dramatically, not like in the movies. It was subtler than that. His eyes blinked too slowly. His mouth opened just a little, as if he'd forgotten what he meant to say. He swallowed, and she heard the sound like it was happening in her own throat. "Run ahead, Janie," he said, and he tried to smile. The smile didn't work. "I'm feeling a little off. I'll catch up in a second." Jane hesitated, half out of the car. She looked back at him. He was already unbuckling, moving too fast now, like he needed to get out before something caught him. Jane did what she'd always been taught to do. She listened. She shut the door and started toward the building, her soccer bag bumping against her hip. She didn't get far. Behind her there was a heavy sound, a kind of dull thump that didn't belong in a parking lot full of engines and distant voices. When she spun around, her dad was stumbling out of the driver's seat. His hand was at his chest, fingers clawing at his shirt like he could pull something loose inside him if he tried hard enough. He took one step, then another, and then his knees seemed to give up. He fell awkwardly, more like a collapsing puppet than a man, and hit the pavement on his side. Jane dropped her bag. It landed open, spilling a shin guard and a water bottle that rolled away. She ran to him, calling out, but the words didn't come out right. Her throat made a thin noise, like she'd forgotten how to use it. She knelt beside him. His eyes were open, but he wasn't really looking at anything. His face had gone a strange pale shade, and there was sweat already shining on his forehead, even in the cold. And then, without any sense of how it happened, she was holding his hand somewhere else. There was no bright light. There were no angels. There was no tunnel. There was a wide gray place, flat and endless. The sky the same color as the ground. It looked like fog, but it didn't move like fog. It didn't feel wet or cold. It felt like nothing, like standing inside a quiet thought. Her dad stood beside her, not on the pavement now, but on gray soil that left no footprints. His hand was in hers. It felt solid, warm, too normal. He looked younger somehow, the deep lines around his eyes softer. But his expression was confused in a way she'd never seen on his face. It wasn't fear exactly. It was disbelief, like someone had changed the rules of the world without telling him. Ahead of them was a lake, perfectly still. The water was darker than the ground, a smooth sheet that didn't ripple. Near the shore waited a small boat, plain and old-fashioned, as if it belonged to 100 different times at once. Jane couldn't see who, if anyone, was in it. Maybe no one needed to be. They walked together toward the water. They didn't talk. There didn't seem to be anything to say. Jane wasn't sure what she could possibly explain, and her dad didn't seem able to ask. His fingers tightened around hers once, a small reflex. Jane held on back, because that was what you did when someone needed you. When they reached the edge of the lake, her dad stopped. He looked down at the boat as if it might be a trick. Then he looked at Jane. His eyes were shiny. "You're okay," Jane heard herself say, though she didn't know if that was true. It was simply the only sentence that made any sense in her mouth. He nodded once, like he was agreeing with her so she wouldn't worry. Then he stepped into the boat. It rocked gently, though the water still didn't move. He sat down carefully, like a man sitting on a bench after a long day, and he kept looking back at her as if he expected her to tell him what came next. Jane lifted her hand and waved goodbye. Her dad tried to wave too, but it came out wrong. His arm twitched nervously, a small motion like his body couldn't decide whether to obey him. His face tightened, and then he swallowed and forced something like a smile. The boat drifted away from the shore, smooth and silent, and soon it was small on the dark water, and then it was gone entirely, as if the lake had simply decided to keep it. There was a sentence in Jane's head then, a thought that didn't feel like it belonged to a child. It arrived whole, like something remembered rather than learned. The ancients never lied. We just stopped listening. Jane didn't know what it meant. She only knew it felt true. And then she was back. The air in the parking lot slammed into her like a shove. The cold hit her skin again. Her dad's body was still on the pavement, twisted in the same position it had fallen. His eyes stared at nothing. Jane's own hand was empty now, but it still tingled as if it had been holding his. Her mother ran out of the building, hair messy, face already breaking apart. Her mouth stretched open in a way Jane had never seen before. A silent scream before the sound came. When it did come, it was raw and animal, something pulled up from a place deeper than language. Jane stood there, frozen, watching her mother fall to her knees beside him. People appeared, like shadows turning into real bodies. Someone shouted for an ambulance. Someone else said words Jane couldn't understand. The world became noise and motion. Jane wanted to tell them she had just walked with him, that he wasn't here anymore. Not really, that he had gotten into a boat. But she didn't. She couldn't. It felt impossible, like trying to describe a dream you could still taste in your mouth. Her dad was the first. He wasn't the last. Jane learned quickly that her strange new job, because it was a job, whether she wanted it or not, had rules. She didn't go looking for dead people. She didn't escort every soul everywhere. It only happened when death happened close enough to her, when she was nearby, when she was part of the moment. Even with that limit, she stayed busy. Not long after her dad, her grandmother died. Dad's mother. It wasn't shocking the way Dad's death had been, but it still felt like a door closing. Jane was nearby when it happened, sitting in a room that smelled like old perfume and dust, watching her grandmother's chest rise and fall in shallow breaths. The family spoke quietly, like volume itself could change what was coming. Jane's mother squeezed her hand so hard it hurt. Then there was a final breath, a pause that went on too long, and the room shifted. Jane was standing in the gray again, holding her grandmother's hand. Only this time, her grandmother didn't look like the frail woman in the bed. Her hand in Jane's was young and smooth, strong in a way that made Jane blink. Her posture was straight. Her eyes were bright lit from inside with something like excitement. The gray light around them didn't dull her. Somehow, it made her glow more. Jane felt an odd, sinking sadness. It was hard to name. It wasn't only grief. It was something like being left behind on purpose. Her grandmother didn't seem confused at all. She looked past Jane, right toward the lake, and her face softened with recognition, as if she could already see someone waiting. "Oh," her grandmother whispered, and it came out like relief. "Oh, thank God." Jane swallowed. It didn't feel right to be so happy to be dead. But who was Jane to say? People carried their own pain. Maybe death was simply a door out of it. They walked toward the lake. Jane stayed close, holding her grandmother's hand. But she felt like luggage, like something being brought along out of politeness. When the boat came into view, Jane's grandmother's whole face changed. She almost ran. Her steps were quick, eager, and for a moment Jane's hand was pulled along so fast she had to jog to keep up. At the shore, her grandmother turned back only briefly, as if she'd almost forgotten Jane was there. "Thank you, sweetheart," she said, and then she stepped into the boat without hesitation. Jane waved goodbye again, standing alone on the gray shore. The boat moved away, and Jane felt very small, very unnecessary. Then the gray vanished, and she was back in the room with the bed and the hushed voices and her mother's trembling hand. After that, it was Sadie. Sadie was the kind of girl that made the whole block feel warmer just because she existed. She had long hair that looked golden red in the sun, like autumn leaves caught on fire. Her eyes sparkled when she laughed, and she laughed easily. She was pretty, yes, but it wasn't the kind of beauty that pushed people away. It drew them in. Jane had a crush on her, like most kids did. It wasn't a dramatic crush. Jane didn't write her name in notebooks or make plans. It was more like a quiet hope that Sadie would look her way and really see her. Sadie talked to everyone. She wasn't one of those popular girls who acted like being kind cost too much effort. Sadie would smile at you, ask how you were, remember small things. Jane wasn't even sure if they were friends exactly. But Jane knew that if someone asked Sadie, Sadie would say yes. She'd probably say she was friends with everyone, and she'd mean it. Sadie died in the street outside Jane's house. It was a hit and run. One moment there was a car, too fast, the sound of tires, someone shouting, and then there was Sadie on the pavement, twisted and bloody in a way that didn't belong to a person. Jane saw red everywhere, saw the unnatural angle of her legs, saw the wet shine of the road under her. It wasn't like when her dad died. It was a million times worse. Jane's stomach turned so hard she thought she might throw up. Her mind tried to reject what her eyes were telling it. This couldn't be Sadie. Not Sadie with the golden red hair. Not Sadie who smiled at everyone. Not Sadie who was supposed to keep growing up the way kids were supposed to. Someone screamed. Maybe it was Jane. Maybe it was someone else. Then the world slid sideways, and Jane was in the gray again, and Sadie was there with her. Sadie's face was whole in the gray, not crushed like the body on the street. Her hair fell around her shoulders, still golden red even in the dim light. Her eyes were wide, bright with panic. Sadie didn't want to go toward the lake. She tried to turn away, pulling hard like a child trying to run back to the playground after being told it was time to go home. Jane held her hand firmly. "Wait," Jane said, though she didn't know what she meant. Wait for what? Wait for acceptance? Wait for the boat? Wait for the moment when the truth sank in? Sadie pulled again. She looked around the empty wasteland, the gray sky, the flat horizon with nothing on it. Her breathing came fast. Her eyes darted, searching for a street, for houses, for any sign of the world she recognized. "I have to go back," Sadie said, her voice cracking. "I have to. My mom. Nye." Then she understood, all at once in a way that hit her like the car must have hit her body. Her mouth opened. She let out a sound that wasn't just crying. It was a howl, long and furious and full of terror. The wind in the gray didn't move, but it felt like the sound was being carried anyway, traveling across the emptiness forever. Jane held Sadie's hand and stayed with her. There was nothing else Jane could do. She couldn't fix it. She couldn't bring her back. She couldn't pretend it wasn't happening. All she could do was be the one person standing beside Sadie in that horrible in-between. Sadie screamed until the moment passed, until her voice went raw and quiet, until her shoulders sagged and the fight drained out of her like water. Then Sadie turned and looked at Jane, and something in her face softened. She stepped forward and hugged Jane hard. Jane hugged back, surprised by how real it felt, how warm Sadie's body was in a place that should have felt like nothing. Jane wanted to tell her she was sorry. She wanted to say 100 things. But Sadie pulled away before Jane could find the words. The boat was waiting at the lake, as it always was. Sadie walked toward it, slow now, like someone walking into a cold ocean one step at a time. When she got in, she sat facing Jane, her hair bright as a small flame against the gray. The boat drifted away, and Jane watched the color of Sadie's hair for as long as she could, letting her eyes cling to it like it was a rope. When it finally disappeared, Jane returned home, and in the real world there was no Sadie anymore. No Sadie to run into on the sidewalk, no Sadie laughing, no Sadie being friends with everyone because she couldn't help it. Years passed, and Jane kept doing what she had to do. It became a quiet rhythm in her life, an ugly second heartbeat. Most people worried about the future, about college, about relationships, about jobs. Jane worried about where she stood in space, how close she was to strangers, whether she was about to be pulled into the gray again without warning. Sometimes it was family. Sometimes it was neighbors. Sometimes it was a passerby who collapsed at the wrong time, in the wrong place, near Jane. Death followed its own rules. Jane only followed behind. Prom night came. Jane had a dress. She had done her hair. She had tried for a few hours to be normal. The gym was full of music and lights and nervous laughter. Couples posed for photos, faces shiny with excitement and too much makeup. For a little while, Jane let herself pretend she was just another teenager under glittery decorations, complaining about shoes and dancing awkwardly with people she'd known since childhood. Then the night ended, and the world reminded her what it was. There was a car crash. A drunk kid behind the wheel, stupid and fearless in the way only some teenagers could be, thinking the universe would forgive him because it always had before. He wrapped the car around a truck. Metal twisted. Glass exploded. The sound was so violent it seemed to punch the air. The driver died. So did the 3 passengers. The girls' beautiful dresses were splattered with blood. The kind of blood that didn't look real until you realized it was. Jane arrived too close to it. Close enough. She didn't take them all across the gray at once. They didn't all die at the same second. Not exactly, and the rules that had chosen Jane as their guide seemed to care about timing. Jane walked across the wasteland 2 by 2. The first time she found herself there, she was holding Bonnie's hand. Bonnie was in Spanish and math with her at school. Bonnie had once lent Jane a pencil and whispered a joke during a test. Bonnie's hand felt small in Jane's, trembling even though the gray air wasn't cold. The boy with them was someone Jane didn't know well. He was new to town. Jane couldn't even remember his name, and the fact that she couldn't made her feel guilty in a sharp, pointless way. His face kept shifting between anger and disbelief, like his mind was flipping through reasons this couldn't be happening and rejecting them one by one. Jane held their hands firmly and walked them toward the lake. Bonnie's eyes filled with tears as the boat came into view. She turned her head, looking back at the gray horizon like she might spot her house if she stared long enough. "My mom," Bonnie whispered, then said it louder as if volume could carry it back to the world of living people. "Mom." Jane kept walking. She didn't answer. What could she say? That her mom wasn't here. That her mom couldn't hear her. That no one could. When Bonnie got into the boat, she was still calling out, voice breaking. The boat pulled away anyway, as indifferent as gravity. Jane returned, and then she was there again with the other 2. Carla was one of the prettiest girls in school. She had looked perfect at prom, like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Even in the gray, Carla's nails were still done, shiny, hard, lacquered with tiny gemstones set into them. It was such a strange detail to survive death that Jane couldn't stop noticing it. Carla wasn't crying. She was furious. The drunk driver, her prom date, was there too, dead now, his face slack and stunned. Carla spun toward him, shrieking at him in a voice that carried through the empty gray. "You did this," she screamed. "You killed us." She lunged at him, scratching at his face with those sharp nails. The gemstones glittered as her hands moved. Jane thought briefly in a stupid, disconnected way that it must have hurt. Of course it didn't. He was dead. Carla scratched and clawed, and nothing changed. No blood, no flinch, no pain. Just the same slack expression, like his body had stopped being a body the moment it stopped being alive. Carla stared at her own hands, realizing it was useless. Her rage didn't vanish, but it collapsed inward like a tent with the poles kicked out. She shook, breathing hard, and then she turned away as if she couldn't stand to look at him. Jane took Carla's hand. Carla's nails dug into Jane's palm. They felt sharp and pointed, but they left no marks because Carla was dead too, and this place didn't keep injuries the way the living world did. Jane held on anyway, ignoring the pressure, and guided Carla and the boy to the waiting boat. This time, Jane waved goodbye like she always did. None of them noticed. They were all too trapped in their own endings. Bonnie with her mother's name in her mouth. Carla with rage still burning in her chest. The boys with shock and regret and whatever else they carried. Jane stood on the shore alone until the boat became nothing. Life went on, because it always did. Jane grew older. She left school. She learned how to function while carrying impossible memories like stones in her pockets. Sometimes she almost convinced herself she could be normal. Then death would happen nearby, and she'd be reminded. Once, years later, Jane was in a neighborhood that wasn't hers. She hadn't meant to be there long. She couldn't leave her mother alone for too long. Old habits of worry died hard. Jane had only gone out for an errand, telling herself it would be quick. Something went wrong. There was shouting, a crowd, people angry, upset, pushing in close. Jane didn't even know what had started it. It felt like stepping into the middle of a storm without seeing the clouds first. Jane tried to get away, tried to slip through the bodies and get back to her car, but the crowd shifted and closed and became a wall. Someone shoved her shoulder. Someone yelled words right into her face. Jane lifted her hands, palms out, trying to show she wasn't part of anything. Then the police arrived, and the shouting changed pitch. Louder, sharper, more desperate. Jane's heart pounded. She couldn't tell where the danger was anymore. It was everywhere. She was still trying to get out when the shots rang out. For a second, her mind refused to recognize the sound. It was too clean, too loud, too final. Someone fell. Blood flashed dark against clothing. People screamed and scattered and pushed harder, and Jane stumbled, and then gray again. Jane stood in the familiar wasteland, holding the hand of a stranger. Half of the stranger's face was gone, blown apart in a way Jane couldn't make herself stare at for long, even here. The rest of his face looked wrong, like a photo torn in half. Jane sighed, because the sigh was all she had left. She didn't need to hold his hand too tightly. He wasn't fighting, he wasn't in denial the way Sadie had been. He wasn't confused the way her dad had been. He looked tired. Shocked, yes, but tired too, as if part of him had already accepted what his body couldn't. "I have kids," he said quietly, not to Jane exactly, but into the gray, like a person speaking into an empty room just to hear a voice. "I have little kids." Jane didn't know what to say, so she said the only thing she could manage. "I'm here," she told him, and she guided him toward the lake. He walked with her without pulling away. He kept swallowing, blinking, looking down at the gray ground as though he might find a reason there. When they reached the boat, he paused, and Jane expected panic, anger, anything. Instead, the stranger turned to her. He was kind to her, and Jane hated that it felt wrong. He shouldn't have to be kind. He shouldn't have to comfort anyone. Not now, not when his life had been ripped open without warning. And Jane didn't deserve thanks. She didn't choose this. She didn't earn it. She was simply the one who was there. But he smiled anyway, what was left of his face trying to form something gentle. "Thank you," he said. Jane stared at him, caught off guard. Then she nodded, because that was all she could do. He stepped into the boat. As it moved away, he lifted his hand and waved at her, smiling like someone leaving a party early, apologizing without words. Jane waved back. Her hand trembled a little. Then the gray vanished again, and she was standing in the real world with screaming people and flashing lights, and a taste of metal in her mouth from fear. Time carried Jane forward the way it carried everyone. The years piled up. Her mother died eventually, not in a dramatic way, but in a slow one, and Jane escorted her too, hand in hand, across the gray, though that walk felt like carrying a piece of herself toward the lake. After that, Jane lived longer than she expected to. Her body became older, then fragile. Her bones complained. Her hands developed thin skin and visible veins. Now Jane was old enough to live in a nursing home. Of course, she was still busy. People died there more often than they did anywhere else Jane had ever been. It wasn't cruel. It was simply the math of age, the quiet truth of bodies that eventually ran out of time. Some residents passed in their sleep. Some faded over days. Some held on stubbornly as if refusing to leave the world without a fight. Jane never got used to it. She couldn't imagine how anyone could. Even after all these years, the first step into the gray always made her stomach drop, as if she was falling. Every time she took a hand, she felt the same strange mix of duty and grief and numbness. But lately, a new thought had begun to circle in her mind, like a bird refusing to land. When her time came, and she could feel it waiting closer now, like a shadow just out of sight. Who would take her? Who would hold her hand in the dim gray and guide her toward the lake? Jane sat in common rooms watching television she didn't care about. She played cards sometimes. She listened to other residents complain about food and aches, and the way the aides did things too fast. She looked at the faces around her, gentle and fallen and confused, and tried to imagine any one of them walking steadily through the wasteland with her. She watched the aides and nurses, too. They were bright and bustling in their uniforms, always in motion, always tired. Some were kind, some were impatient. Some tried not to get attached and failed anyway. Jane wondered if any of them had the right sort of presence, the kind that could guide someone without breaking. She had preferences, and that made her feel guilty, but she had them anyway. She hoped it wouldn't be Clara. Complaining Clara, they called her, and the nickname fit. Clara complained about the temperature, the food, the TV volume, the way other people breathed. Clara could find a problem in sunlight. Jane had escorted enough souls to know that the last thing she wanted at the end of her life was Clara's voice nagging in the gray, making the walk feel longer than it already was. And it had better not be Louisa. Louisa was 22 and worked there. Jane and the others were all sure Louisa stole from them. Small things that were easy to miss at first. A little cash, a ring, a necklace. Louisa always acted innocent, always smiled too brightly, and she wasn't gentle. Not really. She wasn't cruel either. Not in the obvious way, but there was a hardness in her that made Jane think she would be a terrible guide. Jane caught herself thinking, more than once, that she hoped she'd get to escort Louisa herself one day, just out of spite. Then she felt ashamed, because that wasn't who she wanted to be at the end of her life. But thoughts came whether you invited them or not. It probably wouldn't be Louisa anyway. Louisa was young. Jane was old. The odds didn't line up. Soon Jane would find out who it would be. She lay in bed at night listening to the building settle and creak. She listened to soft footsteps in the hall, to distant coughs, to the low murmur of a TV left on in someone's room. She stared at the ceiling, thinking about her father's twitching wave, her grandmother's happiness, Sadie's screaming, Bonnie calling for her mom, Carla's nails digging into her palm, a stranger thanking her when he should have been allowed to be angry. She wondered if the gray wasteland was waiting for her the way the lake waited for everyone else. She wondered if she would be scared. She wondered if she would feel relief. She wondered if she would see anyone she'd ever walked with on the shore, standing there to meet her, hand outstretched, the way she had done for them. The ancients never lied. We just stopped listening. Jane didn't know who the ancients were. She didn't know why the lake and the boat existed, or where they led, or what waited beyond that dark water. She only knew that she had always walked people there, and she had always waved goodbye, and she had always returned alone. And now, with her own time close enough to feel, Jane waited to see whether she would be alone at the shore at last, or whether, for the first time in her life, someone would take her hand and walk with her into the gray. Story 5. The cobblestone street in front of me runs straight toward a small wooden bridge. I've walked this street so many times that I could probably do it with my eyes closed, but tonight, everything feels different. Like the stones are arranged wrong. Like the air has been replaced with something heavier. A sign stands beside the bridge at an awkward angle, the wood dark with age. It tells people to keep their distance. The letters are faded, repainted, faded again. Everyone in town knows the sign. People say it's been there for hundreds of years. Some say it's as old as the city itself. As a kid, I used to think that meant the bridge had been dangerous since the beginning of time, like it was born cursed and never stopped. I used to laugh at that. Now my legs are shaking so badly I have to stop twice just to make myself keep walking. The moon is bright above me, a clean silver disk in a cloudless sky. It should make me feel safer. It should make everything clear. Instead, it makes the street look sharper and more lonely, like the light is only here to show me how empty the world is at this hour. My shoes scrape against the cobblestones. The sound seems too loud. It echoes off the buildings along the canal, old stone walls with narrow windows, dark and quiet. Every house looks like it's holding its breath. The bridge waits at the end of the street. It's not a grand bridge. It's small, old, Made of wood that's been replaced and repaired so many times it's hard to tell what part of it belongs to the past and what part belongs to someone's more recent attempt to keep it standing. The railing is low. The boards are worn smooth where thousands of feet have walked over them. I slow down a few steps before it, staring at the sign again as if it might say something different tonight. Keep your distance. As if distance has ever mattered to something that can reach you from inside your own head. My mouth is dry. My hands are cold. I press my fingers together just to feel something solid. Somewhere behind me, far off, I hear the faint sound of a car on another street, tires whispering over pavement. The city is still awake in the way a body stays warm after the heart has stopped racing, but this part of it is silent. With shaking legs, I set my foot onto the first plank. The wood doesn't creak. That scares me more than if it had. I take another step, and another. The bridge is steady under me, but it feels like the air around it isn't. Like I'm walking into a pocket of the world where different rules apply. As I move toward the center, toward the canal underneath, the voice grows louder. Not like someone calling across a room. Not like a shout carried on wind. It's softer than that. Closer than that, as if the sound is coming up through my bones. It's been whispering to me for days, maybe longer. At first, I thought it was my imagination, my brain replaying the things I can't stop thinking about. I told myself it was grief. I told myself I was just tired. But now it's so clear that I can't pretend anymore. It's calling me, beckoning, pulling. The closer I get to the water, the more undeniable it becomes. The voice isn't just something I hear. It's something that leans into me, filling the empty spaces inside my chest. My heart pounds so hard I can hear it in my ears. I reach the middle of the bridge and take hold of the railing. The wood is cold under my palms, damp from night air. My fingers wrap around it like it's the only thing keeping me from drifting away. I swallow. My throat tightens. I hope Mom will forgive me. The thought lands in my mind with a strange calmness, and that calmness scares me, because it feels like a decision. Then the voice speaks again. Are you lonely, little girl?